Hello and welcome to MoonLit Voyage. We are your hosts, Ali and
Olga.
We are just two people who love to dream, from common dreams to lucid dreaming and even past life experiences. We would like to share with you our personal dreams, unravel the meanings behind them, and how they can connect to our spiritual paths. In this episode, Olga shares with us a dream like no other that she's had before. She takes us to a setting of a high spiritual education where she discovers her true potential and inner power. She calls it Elite Castle.
So in this dream, I am invited to a castle. I know it's a castle because when I walk in, the ceilings are ridiculously high. I mean, like, it feels like it goes on forever. And there's like a skylight up there. It's huge. And it's very ornate. It's beautiful. It's like what you see in the movies, right? And so I'm walking down this hallway. It's like an entrance where they receive you. And I felt very royal. And I walk up to an area and tables and chairs, and they're getting ready for my group, right? And my girlfriend is there. I have a friend that was invited to the castle because you had to receive an invitation in order to be able to come and take the lessons there. And so I see her, and we're so excited to see each other. Oh, we made it. And she had been there a few minutes early, so she was kind of showing me the different areas that she'd already explored. This is where the bathroom is, and this is where the food is and the drinks are. And she asks me, do you want to get a beverage? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I'm not so sure. She was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna have some champagne. I was like, oh, okay, have champagne, that's cool. You go ahead and do that. I think I'm going to have a juice. Right? So I get myself a juice. And so we go as the young ladies are arriving, because this is an all-female group. We're all congregating, and I'm mingling. I'm trying to, get to know these women, because I'm going to be in this castle for, I'm not even sure how long, but I assume it's going to be for years. So I'm going to want to get to know my classmates, and we're mingling. And there's a woman that walks up to me, and she starts asking me a bunch of questions, right? Just very aggressive and direct. And I don't have a problem with direct. It was almost like she was interrogating me, though, and it started to feel a little uncomfortable.
Was she part of the staff of the school, or?
No, she was a student.
Oh.
Yeah, she was a student, so she was one of my classmates. And I don't know how I knew it, but I felt like she was going to, because she was getting progressively more, like, louder and a little bit more verbal as she, as the sentences went along in our conversation. And for whatever, I never really understood it, but she tried to attack me. She kind of came after me. And that's when I realized that I had these little pins in my pocket. I had these, which you can envision as like a paper clip that's like pulled out so that it's all straight and even. Mm-hmm. That, if you wanted to use it, you could, prick somebody with it, right? But if you ever got caught with it, you wouldn't get in trouble. It's literally a paper clip, right? So what is somebody going to get upset with you about? And if you're smart and you use it in the right way, it's a weapon, but then you can bend it back into a paperclip, and it can be conspicuous. It's easy to get rid of. It's not against the law. There's nothing, right? So there's a lot of premeditated thought related to these paper clips. So I have them in my pocket, and for a split second, I have a choice as to whether or not I'm gonna, I put my hand in my pocket and everything. Am I gonna use this on her? And then I decide not to, and I go and I pull her, and I put my fingers on her neck, in these two pressure points in her neck. That I'm not sure how I knew, but I knew that if I pressed these pressure points, that she would faint. And she did. She fell to the floor, and it created, you know, a kind of like a ruckus. Everybody around us just like, oh my God, what happened? So there were different reactions. There were those that were genuinely concerned, you know, some that came over like, what the hell? What that just came out of nowhere on alert, right? And then there were others who were like, what did you do to her? Like, right? So I had all these different reactions, different voices. And I realized as I looked down at her and I say to them, she's going to be okay. She's, you know, I just put her down. Nothing is wrong. She's fine. She'll wake up in about 5 minutes. I look to my left and I see that I dropped my little paperclip. So I scurried over to go get it and pick it up and put it in my pocket. And then that's when I realized that I had a choice, that my instincts were telling me to do her harm. You know, she's getting up in your face. She's getting ready to put her hands on you. You do not allow that. You do not allow her to put her hands on you. And I chose to go the route of not hurting her. And then the scene changed, and immediately went to another room where there were these two young ladies that were not my girlfriend, and they were not the person who was upset with me for whatever reason. They were these other two young ladies that were in the background, and they both came rushing over. Oh my God, I can't believe that you did that. Oh my God, that was so awesome. How did you do that? Asking me a bunch of questions. And I was like, I don't really know. I mean, I guess I just reacted. You know, I was trying to be humble. I didn't want to share all of my thought process and everything that I had just discovered about how I could do things versus how I did do it. And in that conversation was when I realized that I had passed a test. That interaction was a personal test for my decision-making skills, and that someone who maybe was a little less mature, and maybe had a little bit more ego or more fire in their, you know, their energy body, or would have handled it very differently. But that I had the wherewithal to really just take a beat and take control of the situation, and actually show my classmates how a thing should be handled.
Right.
And that's why they were reacting to me the way that they were reacting to me. And so, you know, I was trying not to talk about it. I was trying to not, you know, cause too much attention. But one of those two young ladies went over to another group of women who were not in our group. They were in our school, but they weren't in our group. And that's when I understood that they were we were fifth graders, so we were entrants, but that these were eighth graders. And these eighth graders, there was one young lady who was our RN, so she was like our not RN like nurse, but our resident, student resident. So the person who takes care of us in our like dorm rooms and make sure that, you know, we are taking care of what we're supposed to take care of. We're in for our because we have a certain time at night that we're supposed to be in. We have classes we have to go to, right? So she was like that kind of a resident person. And the two young ladies wanted to brag to her about their new friend, me. And so they're relaying this story to her. And then she looks around at the other eighth graders, and they all, you know, raise their eyebrows like, okay, new kid on the block. All right, I see you. Like that kind of thing. Yeah. So then they said, all right, well, if you could do that, then you can do this. And so the scene changed again. And we go to a door that leads to a room that has another door on the other side of it. And they said to me, this is another test. You need to walk through this room. You cannot look at anyone. You do not make enough noise that anyone will notice you. And you have to make it through the end and open up the door before anybody says your name or asks who you are or tries to get your attention, right? So I'm like, okay, take a deep breath, and I open the door, quiet, and I walk through, and I march. I march from one door to the next. I make it across. I open the door really, really quiet, and then I close it behind me, and then I let out my breath. I had to hold my breath the entire time. And as I was walking, I understood that the students that were in that classroom were the elites. Those were the ones who were like PhD level, right? And that's when I understood what we were there for, that this was a school of consciousness, right? And that I was being invited to raise my consciousness, to raise my frequency and my vibration, and that there were levels to this shit. There were the elites that were in this room, and the reason why they were not to be disturbed was not because there's a better than or worse than or lower than or high than. It was just that they were at a level where they knew more, and it was a matter of respect. For me to go into their classroom and walk through it and disturb them would have been the highest disrespect. Like, what are you doing here? Why would you even enter and be in our presence when we're in a place of learning, right? And these 8th graders, they said it was a test, and I was silly enough to believe them. It was a prank that they were putting me on.
What?
Yeah. And had I gone through it and gotten in trouble, it would have been exactly that. I would have gotten in trouble. I would have been reprimanded, the whole thing, right? So there was a lesson in it that was real, mm-hmm. right? Which was, don't follow what everybody tells you to do, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody is your teacher. And the other side of it is execute to the best that you possibly can, right? Like I couldn't tell you how difficult it was to get through that room holding your breath. It was a long ass room. It was a long way to walk. I'm not sure how I even did it, but I did.
They told you to hold your breath?
They did not, but I did that because I didn't want to make any noise. I was like, I don't even want to breathe, like, because it was that solemn. Yeah. It was that important. It was that like heavy of a task, and I knew how much trouble I could get in, and I was naive enough to believe that this was a real, you know what I mean, a test from like my superior, my mm-hmm. teachers, mm-hmm. right? And I even took on, you know, my 8th graders as teachers as well. And I can't say that I necessarily, like, in the dream felt bad about that. It's just that I understood. Yeah. I knew what that was, right? So now that I understood where I was, that this was a school of consciousness, that there was a place or an end goal to get to that I was very far away from. To get to the elites, you had to be in this game for, you know, and I say game, but in this school for a while. The scene changed again. And now we're in a room that is gorgeous. It's like decked out, like it's decadent. It's beautiful, and it has a lot of red velvet and plush carpeting and beautiful gold and red pillows. It's almost like it's for like kings and queens. It's like for royalty. And there was this, you know, this banquet with these beautiful windows, and it was just gorgeous. I can't even describe how beautiful it was. But everybody was just kind of lounging, eating fruit. It was like a very like
it was Greek type of feeling, you know, for the rich, for the gods. Wow.
That's exactly how it felt. Wow. And I'm not sure why or how, but we were being rewarded for either it being our first day or for good behavior. I'm not sure exactly what, but we were being treated to something. That was not an everyday thing, but we were definitely loving it. We were basking in it. So as I go to find a seat, you know, an open area for me to go and sit, there were 2 women who come in with my girlfriend from the very first scene. And, you know, one arm for one girl and one arm for the other, and they're practically carrying her. And she is drunk. She's drunk as a skunk. She's just drunk. And nobody we all know who she is, but nobody in the room wants to help her. And part of the reason, I have to explain this, part of the reason is because her vibration, because of the alcohol, her vibration was off. It was just very different from everybody else that was in the room, and the discomfort and the non effort in terms of helping her was because of that, because it just didn't feel good.
Right.
It felt bad just to be in her presence, and it felt bad to me too. I didn't like it either, and I really didn't want to help in that it didn't feel good to me, but I did want to help in that she was my friend. Right? And I knew that if I didn't help her, that she could possibly get kicked out. And there was there's a camaraderie amongst the group. So in my class of, the fifth graders, we weren't going to snitch on her. We weren't going to go and tell the headmaster or anything like that. We were going to let that play itself out if we had to. But I was in a position that I could help her, and that I would help her because I had a connection with her. So I was like, bring her over here, put the covers over her head. And I can't even look at her. Can't even see. And so I reached underneath and I took her hand, and I could immediately, it felt warm, right? And I held it, and I knew what she needed in order to bring her frequency up. I just held it, and I just closed my eyes, and I thought about our childhood. I thought about how we grew up. I thought about our friendship, our relationship. And then I got to a place where I beamed into the love that I have for her, and then I sent it to her through my hand. And then about 10 minutes go by maybe, and she comes out from under the covers, and she feels a lot better. You could see it in her face. She's no longer, inebriated. And she thanks me, and she's like, oh my God, thank you so much. I know that was hard for you, but I really needed your help, and I appreciate it. And that was the end of the dream.
So, Olga, these questions came up, and just going back to the time when you had to hold your breath, and the fifth graders in your class were trying to do a prank, and you had to go through these doors, right? Do you think that represented lessons in life that you had to go through in your real life situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely. So when I was presented with the prank, right, I wholeheartedly believed that I had to do this thing in order to be accepted, in order for me to get to the higher level, in order for me, right? And I've had many situations where I felt like there was a certain pathway that I had to go in order to achieve a thing, right? And even in my spiritual path, it was the same, right? So there are things or initiations that I went through, things that I believed in, things, pathways that I went based off of what other people were telling me is the spiritual path, quote unquote, air quote, right? That I no longer practice.
Right.
I no longer have to, right? It helped in the moment. I went through it. I listened to someone else's advice. So for instance, and this might cause some issues for some people, but ancestor altars, I did all of the things related to ancestor altars, right? All of the things. And then I no longer needed to, right? Because it doesn't invalidate that practice or, right, doing those things. It's that I had gotten to a place in my consciousness where I didn't necessarily need to anymore because I made a connection for myself, right? But it was something that someone else had told me was an initiation that I had to go through in order to get to the other side of the door, right?
Okay.
And I see that for what it is now, right? And I could have in the dream said, hell no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. That's that. I'll get into more trouble if I make a mistake in that room than telling you no right now.
Right.
Right. But I didn't. I went forward and I did it anyway. I chose that other, the path to go through it.
Was it for acceptance? A little bit of acceptance?
It was naivete. It was just being naive, right? Same thing with the ancestor altars. It's like there's a little bit of, you follow along your path. There are certain things that come into your consciousness or your knowing, right? Basis off of what you're consuming. So for me, it was things that was on YouTube. It was different teachers. It was different, modalities and methods and all of that stuff. And I had to sift and sort and figure out what was going to work for me. And that was one of the things that I chose. And then in the end, I realized I didn't necessarily need it because my goal was to connect with energies.
Right.
Right. And you can do that with an ancestor altar, right? It just pulls all of your focus. That's what it helps to do, is to pull all of your focus so that you can concentrate and put your intent, out there, in order to receive something back. But I realized that I could also do that anywhere. I could do it in the park. I could do it in my bed. I could do it in my living room.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what that meant. It's what it symbolized in my walking life versus the dream.
So also when you were trying to help your friend, she seemed drunk out of her mind and you were holding her hand and it actually elevated her to a higher consciousness and took away that alcoholism from her body. Do you think that was a representation of how you're helping others now, today?
I think that was a representation of what we're all meant to do, right? It's what I strive for. Do I do it? To the best of my ability, but I think that that's what we're all supposed to be doing for each other. Because remember, I had to get into a state of mind where I had to sink into how I really feel about her, right? I could be frustrated. I could be annoyed, right? Because I knew that she knew better than that, right? In order to get into the school, you knew better, right? But she made a different choice. And for that, I was a little annoyed with her. However, my love for her and my love for, what she wanted for herself superseded all of that. And so all I had to do was just sink into that in order to get to unconditional love. And that's what we ultimately can give to another, to a stranger, to a family member, right? Is to sink into that feeling and then offer that.
Right. I mean, the world would be a better place if we all thought that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think overall, this was a dream that helped me to put some things into perspective about where I was on my path. Some of the things that related to my peers, I would say, that were different, maybe gifts or understandings or maturity or lessons that I'd accumulated even amongst my peers, and that ultimately I have to lead myself and then help others. Right? So that was the sequence of those four rooms, those four different scenes.
Perfect.
Right?
Yes.
And in the end, to your point, that's what we're all here for.
I love it. Thank you so much, Olga. I don't have any more questions for you. It was a great dream.
Thank you. Thanks.
This dream puts Olga's perspective of the different levels of consciousness on display and suggests that we have the power to experience our highest potential. Well, friends, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, we invite you to wake up through your dreams. We would love to hear from you, so feel free to leave your comments, questions, or suggestions below of what you would like to hear next. Click the subscribe button to our YouTube channel and receive notifications for additional thought-provoking content.